He stood alone at the roadside, shattered glass glinting in the sun, sirens fading into the distance. His entire world had vanished in seconds, until a golden retriever in a cape appeared, sniffing through the wreckage, holding something in, his mouth that would change everything. If this moment pulled your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of hope and miracle. The screeching of metal had faded. Now, there was only wind. Glass crunched under his shoes as Ethan stumbled through the wreckage, twisted guardrails, a crumpled sedan, the scorched scent of fuel and rubber. He had survived, but just barely. His parents, gone. His little sister, gone. Just hours ago, they were singing in the car, driving to his university orientation. Now, he was standing alone on a lonely highway. The police had come and gone. The paramedics did what they could. The world moved on, but Ethan couldn't. His hands shook as he stared at the mangled family car, tears blurring his vision. Every memory screamed inside his chest. And then, a sound. Click, click, sniff. Golden Retriever emerged from behind the barrier. He wore a bright red cape. On his chest, instead of the famous S, a bold R gleamed in the sunlight. The dog walked with purpose, eyes sharp, expression noble, like a guardian sent from somewhere higher. He wasn't just any dog. He was SuperRetriever. Ethan blinked. Was he hallucinating? SuperRetriever sniffed near the passenger side, then suddenly barked twice. He pawed at something stuck beneath the seat. With delicate care, he pulled out a charred but mostly intact, leather-bound book. His teeth gripped the strap without tearing it. This was no ordinary dog. Ethan fell to his knees as SuperRetriever dropped the object into his lap. It was his mother's diary. He recognized the floral cover. She always said she kept her thoughts inside, never shared too much. She laughed with them but held storms behind her smile. Hands trembling, Ethan opened the first page. It wasn't just a diary. It was a secret she never told him, something she meant to pass on only if the worst happened. And the worst had happened. SuperRetriever sat beside him, watchful, as if he knew what came next. A story was about to begin, not of death, but of truth. And that truth would change Ethan's life forever. Ethan couldn't breathe as he stared at the first page. To my children, if you ever find this, it means I couldn't protect you from everything, but I tried. Oh, how I tried. The handwriting was delicate, looping. It was undeniably hers. His fingers traced the words like they might vanish. SuperRetriever lay beside him in the grass, eyes fixed on him with a quiet intensity, guarding not only Ethan, but what he was about to learn. Each page bled emotion. Some lines were smudged, maybe from old tears. Others were hurried, frantic. It wasn't just a journal, it was a chronicle of love, fear, and warning. You deserve to know the truth, one entry read. As Ethan turned the pages, the fragments of a hidden reality began to assemble. His mother had been sick, very sick. For nearly 2 years, she'd been battling an aggressive form of leukemia, one that had returned even after remission. She had kept it from him and his sister to protect them, not wanting their final memories to be shadowed by pain. His father had supported her decision. Together, they carried the weight in silence. We wanted to give you as many normal days as we could, she wrote. But the most haunting part came in an entry dated just 5 days before the crash. There's something else, something I haven't told your father. I've had this dream over and over, about a road, a storm, and you alone in the aftermath. I don't know if it's a warning or just my fear leaking into my sleep, but I can't shake it. Ethan's chest tightened. The crash. Had it really been just chance? He flipped to the next page, but it was blank. So were the next 3. Then, near the back of the book, a folded note was wedged between the pages. Different paper, different ink. And not his mother's handwriting, his father's. Ethan unfolded it slowly. It was short. If you're reading this, it means our choice made it to you. We didn't lose control that day. We made a decision. There was another vehicle. Someone swerving into oncoming traffic. We could have avoided it, but it would have meant letting that school bus take the hit. We chose otherwise. We'd do it again. Ethan froze. His parents had saved lives. Deliberately. They had seen the bus, the kids, the danger, and made the ultimate choice. Tears streamed down his face. The pain didn't disappear, but it changed. Became something heavier, deeper. But now it had purpose. He hadn't just lost them in an accident. They had given their lives for others. SuperRetriever nudged his arm with his nose, as if to say, "There's more to discover. Get up. Keep going." In the distance, the wind rustled the trees. And Ethan knew he had to follow the clues, find where the dream truly ended and where his future began. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He sat on the floor of what had been their home, now quiet, still, filled with photographs that hurt to look at. The diary lay open in his lap. Beside him, SuperRetriever curled up protectively, head resting on Ethan's knee. The dog hadn't left his side since the accident, as if he had chosen him for a mission Ethan didn't yet understand. Ethan flipped back through the pages again and again, eyes scanning for anything he had missed. Every sentence from his mother read like a whisper from beyond, each word carefully chosen, hiding layers of love and urgency. But one line kept echoing. There's more than just truth in these pages. There's a path. He flipped to the very last page of the diary. It was stuck shut, barely noticeable under the frayed binding. Gently, he peeled it apart. And there it was. A folded envelope. It had his name written on it. Just his name. Ethan. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a single, handwritten letter. Unlike the others, this wasn't journaled. It was meant for him. The ink was uneven, written in what seemed like a rush. My dearest Ethan, if you're reading this, we're already gone. I don't want to imagine your pain, but I need you to know, your father and I chose to protect others because we believed in you. You are not alone, even if it feels that way now. I had a dream, one that came every night for weeks. In it, a golden figure stood by your side, always pointing you forward. I thought it was nonsense until you were born. And then I saw it in your eyes. You were meant to lead, even through pain. And the golden figure? I think it was him. Ethan looked at SuperRetriever. The golden retriever met his gaze, unmoving, deep brown eyes like wells of ancient wisdom. He will stay with you. He knows your path. And soon, he'll show you where to go. Trust him, Ethan. Even when you feel lost, follow the golden one. He'll help you find the man you're meant to become. And when you're ready, go to the place where I used to sing you lullabies under the stars. You'll find the rest there. With all my love, Mom. The letter fell from his hand. He remembered it instantly. The old family cabin by the lake, far from the city, where his mother used to sing while they watched the stars. He hadn't been there in years. SuperRetriever suddenly stood up. Tail lifted, ears alert. He walked to the door and barked once, then twice. He looked back at Ethan. The message was clear. It's time. The morning fog rolled low across the hills as Ethan packed the last of his things into the old hatchback. He hadn't driven since the accident, but today wasn't just about driving. It was about returning. about facing the place where his mother's lullabies once echoed under starlight. SuperRetriever jumped effortlessly into the passenger seat. His cape fluttered slightly as the breeze passed through the open window, his eyes fixed ahead, already knowing where they were going, as if the lake called to him too. The journey was quiet. Ethan gripped the wheel, not sure if the shaking in his hands was from nerves or anticipation. Road signs blurred past, familiar towns faded behind, and the mountains grew taller ahead. He glanced sideways. SuperRetriever sat like a sentinel, unblinking, calm, patient. Hours passed. Finally, the gravel road appeared, old, overgrown, nearly invisible to anyone who didn't already know it was there. The car bumped along the trail until at last, the old family cabin came into view. It was just as he remembered. Weather-worn wood, a porch swing that creaked in the wind, the remnants of a wind chime his sister made when she was 9. The lake shimmered beyond the trees, reflecting the sky like a memory waiting to resurface. As Ethan stepped out of the car, the air smelled of pine, ash, and nostalgia. He hesitated, heart heavy. Then SuperRetriever jumped down, nose lifted, to the wind. Without a bark, without hesitation, he started walking toward the back of the cabin, toward the forest. Ethan followed. They moved in silence through trees and memories, past the fallen oak where his father used to set up hammocks, past the stone circle where they once roasted marshmallows. Every step pressed deeper into the past. And then they reached it. The clearing. At the center was the flat rock where his mother used to sing lullabies, voice soft against the rustle of the leaves. Ethan's throat tightened. SuperRetriever stood still at the rock's edge, tail low, ears raised. There, tucked beneath the stone, was something wrapped in plastic. Ethan dropped to his knees. Inside the bundle was another journal. But this, time, not written by his mother. It was his father's, thicker, rougher handwriting, full of entries dating back years. Some pages were stained with dirt and time. Ethan flipped through, heart racing. One phrase repeated itself across several pages. The man in the woods will tell him what I cannot. What man? SuperRetriever barked once, loud and sharp. Ethan looked up. On the edge of the clearing, standing silently under the trees, was a figure, an older man, rugged, a face familiar but aged, holding a weathered photograph in his hand. He stepped forward and spoke Ethan's name. The man's voice was gravel and wind. Ethan. Ethan froze. He didn't recognize the face, but there was something familiar in the way the man said his name, like it carried years of memory. SuperRetriever stepped slightly ahead, protective yet calm, eyes never leaving the man's hands. The stranger held up a photograph. It was old, faded from the sun and time, but Ethan saw it clearly. It was his parents, and in the middle, a baby in a hospital blanket. Him. Ethan's voice cracked. "Who are you?" The man took a slow step forward, lowering the photo. "My name is Jonas. I was your father's best friend, once." SuperRetriever remained still, but his ears twitched. Jonas knelt by the fire pit stones. His hands were calloused, dirt under the nails. He didn't live in a city. His coat was torn at the sleeve. There was something wild about him, something broken but not dangerous. "My dad never mentioned you." Jonas gave a tired smile. He wouldn't, not after what happened. Ethan sat on the same flat rock his mother used to sing from. His father's journal was still in his hands. Jonas pointed to it. "He left that for you, didn't he? Told you to come here?" Ethan nodded. "He said you'd tell me what he couldn't." Jonas sighed. "Then it's time." He sat on a log and began. 20 years ago, Ethan's father and Jonas had worked for a small private transport firm. Nothing illegal, but highly confidential. They transported sensitive documents, VIPs, and, on one particular occasion, a newborn child under threat. That child was Ethan. There was a situation, Jonas said. A dangerous one. Someone wanted to hurt your mother. Your dad went dark to protect you both. Changed names, changed lives. Ethan's mouth went dry. What do you mean, changed names? Jonas looked up at him, serious. Your father was never Daniel Moore, he was Caleb Rivers. And your mother wasn't just a school teacher. She was once the lead analyst for a national intelligence group. She found something she shouldn't have, and she ran. Ethan reeled. His parents weren't just ordinary people. They had once lived under a different identity, protecting him from a threat that spanned years. The man they feared, he's long gone, Jonas added. But they kept running, even when it was over. They wanted you to grow up normal. Ethan stared into the forest. So many birthdays, so many memories, all real, yet built on a secret. Jonas took something from his coat, a small rusted key. This opens the back room in this cabin. Your father's old safe is inside. Whatever's left, papers, files, truth, it's yours now. Ethan took the key, fingers curling around the cool metal. SuperRetriever let out a soft whine, nudging Ethan's leg. It wasn't fear, it was urgency, as if even the dog knew what came next would change everything. Ethan stood. The cabin awaited. The cabin creaked as Ethan stepped inside, SuperRetriever padding silently behind him. Dust clung to every surface like the cabin had held its breath. For years, faded curtains swayed gently in the breeze from a cracked window. This was more than a childhood memory now. It was a vault of secrets. He moved through the rooms, each step heavier than the last, until he found the door at the back. The lock clicked open with the rusted key Jonas had given him. Inside, a single bulb flickered on as he pulled the chain. The room was small, stone walls, a filing cabinet, and an old safe bolted to the floor. SuperRetriever sniffed the air and sat near the safe, tail still, watching Ethan closely. He knelt, turning the dial slowly. It took 3 attempts before the lock gave way. The door creaked open. Inside, carefully preserved in sealed folders and envelopes, were classified documents, newspaper clippings, handwritten maps, USB drives, and a thick folder labeled May 18, Bus 47. Ethan's hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a report written by his father. We saw the bus veer. We saw the truck speeding toward it. We had 1 second, one choice: turn left and protect ourselves, or accelerate and become the barrier. We chose the children. Attached were surveillance stills, black and white images from a nearby gas station security camera. The photos showed his family's car swerving, not out of control, but intentionally. The truck behind them collided seconds later, and in another frame, a school bus passed unharmed. Ethan's chest tightened. His parents didn't just happen to save those kids. They planned it in a split second. They gave up their lives so others could live, but no one had ever known. He flipped through the file. There were letters from families of the children on that bus. Letters addressed to unknown heroes. One in particular stood out. To whoever saved my daughter that day. I don't know your name, but I know you gave me a second chance. I hope your family knows what you did. I'll never forget you. Tears streamed down Ethan's face. They would know now. SuperRetriever nudged his side gently. Ethan looked down and saw that the dog had unearthed something else. Buried beneath the safe, a small black box. Inside it, a flash drive. Back at the main room, Ethan plugged it into an old laptop. A video file auto-played. It was his father. Eyes, tired, voice low. "If you're watching this, son, then our story's been passed on. We didn't want to be remembered as victims. We wanted to be remembered as your parents, but if the world needs to know what happened, let it be told with truth and courage." Ethan closed the laptop. He had the truth, the proof, the legacy. Now it was time to do something with it. The next morning, the first rays of sun spilled across the lake like golden threads, quiet, peaceful, unaware of the weight Ethan now carried. But something inside him had shifted. He stood at the edge of the water, SuperRetriever beside him, both looking at their reflections. In the soft ripples, Ethan didn't see the broken boy from the highway anymore. He saw someone with a mission. He whispered, "They saved lives. Now I'll tell the world." Back in town, Ethan moved fast. He didn't return to the apartment, didn't call old friends. Instead, he found a quiet cafe with reliable Wi-Fi and opened the files, his father's voice playing in his ears one last time as he pieced everything together. He compiled the surveillance footage, the bus route, the weather conditions, the letter from the parents, and most importantly, the video confession from his father. It was no longer just a private truth. It was a story the world deserved to hear. With trembling fingers, he uploaded everything, not to a private archive, but to the internet. He wrote a simple title, "My parents died saving a school bus, and no one ever knew." Within hours, it spread. People watched. They cried. They commented. "Heroes. Angels. Thank you." News outlets picked it up. Radio stations discussed it. And across the country, those whose children had survived that day came forward. Ethan was no longer alone, but something even more powerful happened. People didn't just watch. They acted. Donations flooded in, not to Ethan, but to causes his parents would have supported: leukemia research, highway safety, children's, trauma therapy. And through it all, SuperRetriever remained at his side. They called the golden retriever the guardian dog. Some thought he was a trained rescue animal. Others believed he was something more. Ethan didn't correct them. He didn't know himself, but he felt the truth. SuperRetriever hadn't just found the diary. He had guided him, protected him, led him back to the truth when everything else had crumbled. And now, people looked at Ethan not with pity, but with admiration. He spoke at schools, shared the story with students, told them about sacrifice, about unseen heroes, about the power of doing the right thing even when no one is watching. One day, after a school event, a boy tugged on his coat. "My dad drives a school bus," the kid said. "He said if someone saved me like that, he'd want them to be remembered forever. I think your mom and dad are proud of you." Ethan knelt. "Thanks, buddy." The boy turned to SuperRetriever and asked, "Is he your dog?" Ethan smiled, eyes warm. "No," he said. "I think I'm his." The sky was gray when Ethan drove back to the highway. Weeks had passed since the accident, since the truth, since the world discovered what two quiet parents had done with their final breath. But for Ethan, one thing remained unfinished. He needed to return, not to grieve, but to thank them. The same stretch of road curved before him, same bend, same faded sign. But now, there were flowers, hundreds of them, placed by strangers, families, bus drivers, school children. A small, wooden sign stood near the guardrail, in honor of the silent heroes, May 18th. Ethan parked the car slowly. SuperRetriever jumped out and stood still, cape fluttering softly as he sniffed the air. His gaze was fixed on a single spot, the same place he had found the diary. Ethan followed him. The earth had changed. It had been cleared by visitors, preserved. But as he knelt by the spot, something caught his eye. A flower, not one placed by a mourner. It was growing, a wild bloom with gold and white petals rising through the cracked asphalt. Ethan reached for it, gently brushing the dirt around its stem. He looked closer. There were more. Dozens of tiny blossoms had emerged all around that exact area, as if the land itself remembered the sacrifice and now bloomed in response. He sat back on his heels, stunned. SuperRetriever lay down beside him, letting out a deep sigh. Not tired, but peaceful. Ethan spoke softly. "You knew this spot, didn't you? Before I did." The dog lifted his head and looked at him. Not just at him, but into him. Like an old soul reassuring a young one. "Yes, you were always meant to return." Ethan pulled the diary from his backpack, the one his mother wrote now. Worn but treasured. He placed it beside the flower, resting it gently on a flat stone like an offering, not to forget, but to honor. And then he stood. He turned to SuperRetriever. "Ready to go home?" The retriever tilted his head and then started walking, but not toward the car, toward the trees. Ethan followed, heart pounding. Was there something more? They entered the woods only a few steps in before SuperRetriever stopped. He turned to Ethan, barked once, and sat. There, lying beneath the pine needles, was another object. It was a tag, a faded military-style dog tag, rusted at the edges. Ethan picked it up. Engraved on the metal was a single word, Retriever. Nothing else. No numbers. No address. No human owner. Just the name. Ethan looked down at the golden dog, stunned. "Is that yours?" SuperRetriever wagged his tail once and stood, ready to move again, as if the tag didn't matter to him, only to Ethan. Because now the boy had everything he needed. The story, the legacy, the truth, and the companion who had brought him to it all. 1 year later, the auditorium was full. Children whispered. Parents wiped their eyes. Teachers adjusted microphones. At the center of the stage stood Ethan, no longer the lost, silent boy from the crash, but a young man with purpose etched into his every word. SuperRetriever stood beside him, cape clean, chest tall, the golden R shining beneath the lights. Ethan held the microphone and began. "My parents didn't die in a car crash," he said calmly. "They chose to save a school bus full of children. They made a decision in 1 second that gave dozens of families a lifetime." The screen behind him showed images of the crash site, of the wildflowers growing through the asphalt, of the diary, of the letters from grateful parents. He spoke of sacrifice, of silent heroes, of the legacy we all carry. But most of all, he spoke of SuperRetriever, the dog who had found the diary, who had led him to the truth, who had stayed beside him when no one else could. "The golden figure in my mother's dream," Ethan said, voice cracking. "She saw him before I ever met him, and now I know. He didn't just save me. He showed me who I'm supposed to be." The applause was thunderous. That night, when the crowd had left and the lights dimmed, Ethan sat on the school steps with SuperRetriever resting against him. Crickets chirped in the grass. A gentle breeze carried the scent of spring. He looked up at the stars. "I miss them," he whispered, "but I think they'd be proud." SuperRetriever lifted his head and rested it on Ethan's knee. No bark, no sound, just presence. Soon after, the Moore Foundation for Quiet Heroes was launched. Named after Ethan's true surname and powered by the story that had touched millions, it supported families affected by roadside tragedies, funded therapy for children, and sponsored golden retriever rescues trained to comfort trauma victims. And SuperRetriever? He became more than a symbol. He became a legend. He stood beside survivors, visited schools, appeared in silent vigils and bustling classrooms alike. He became hope with fur, purpose with paws. No one ever found out where he came from. Not even Ethan. Some said he was trained by rescue teams. Others whispered that he had no owner, that he simply arrived when someone needed him most. Ethan didn't care. He only knew one thing. When the world goes dark, sometimes the light returns on 4 golden legs, wearing a red cape with an R. I liked the video, subscribe to my channel, and comment what you thought. Until the next video.